ICLEI as well as the BA Regional Network for the opportunity to present. And I've been tasked with presenting on the green building policy landscape of South Africa. As I mentioned earlier, I hold the business development position within the Green Building Council South Africa, with a focus on the public sector. In the process of developing the presentation, I took the view not to focus on policy related only to buildings, but to take a holistic view spatially. So I've taken into account issues of land use management and spatial development, and so I've considered policy relevant at the precinct level as well. In terms of the presentation outline, I'll start off by introducing the Green Building Council South Africa. Then I'll go into the policy landscape, and I'll finish off by looking at the policy limitations, the implementation challenges to date, and the opportunities that exist. So who are we as the Green Building Council of South Africa? And I think we've got a few Green Building Councils and the World Green Building Council represented on this call today. And so just briefly, we were established in 2007. We're a non-profit organization. We're a member of the World Green Building Council. We are the National Green Building Authority in South Africa, and we have just over 800 members. And interestingly, in terms of representation, only 1% of that is representative of the public sector. Our purpose is to drive the transformation of the property sector within the country. So we want to take into account green economy principles. We want to ensure low carbon development, inclusive development, low impact on the environment and on people in the process of developing the built environment. There are three ways in which we go about implementing this transformation. The first is advocacy, and this is where the policy piece of work sits. And so in terms of advocacy, we host numerous events throughout the year to exchange information with our members, but also we utilize this as an opportunity to comment on policy and to influence the policy landscape within the country. And then, of course, training is a key enabler to transformation of the built environment, as well as certification. And that makes reference to green building standards and third-party verification of green buildings. Moving into the policy landscape. At an international level, I'm going to start at an international level and then filter down right to the city level with regards to policies, strategies, and frameworks that exist. And I think it goes without saying that we're all familiar with these international climate change policies. The first one is the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, and this speaks very much to sustainable growth, economic growth. It speaks to inclusive development as well. So the SDGs are critical in terms of guiding our national policy framework. Similarly, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change ratified the Paris Agreement, and there are now 186 countries that are signatories of the agreement, and South Africa is one of them. And as we know, as you may know, the purpose of the Paris Agreement is to ensure that the average global temperature does not exceed 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius pre-industrial rates come 2050. And the aim is to achieve net zero emissions come the end of the century. I thought it was worth mentioning the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. They are implementing extensive work around developing global and regional roadmaps in response to the Paris Agreement, with specific reference to the built environment. And so the roadmaps address low carbon development and resilient development. And I'm sure some of you were part of the global and regional roadmap development process as well. And lastly, I'd like to make reference to the World Green Building Council's Net Zero Carbon Buildings Declaration. A few of our cities in the country are signatory to this declaration. And really what they've signed up to is net zero carbon within new buildings come 2030, and net zero carbons in new and existing buildings come 2050. And now looking at the national policy framework of South Africa at a high level, I'd like to start off by giving an indication of the three key layers of our policy and the three key elements that shape the rest of the policy framework within the country, thus guiding different national departments and municipalities within the implementation. The first one is the Constitutional Bill of Rights, and I've referenced two sections of the Bill of Rights. The purpose of the bill is really to state what the rights of South African citizens are. And included within the rights is the preservation of the environment for current and future generations, the right to access to sufficient water and food, and the avoidance of an environment that is detrimental to the health and well-being of citizens. And I thought these were key in the context of sustainable built environments. Then comes the National Development Plan, which speaks to the country's development pathway as a whole. And the emphasis of the development plan is the eradication of poverty and inequality. The plan does take into consideration that in order to achieve an eradication of poverty and inequality, sustainable economic growth is critical. And so an emphasis is placed on a low carbon development pathway and a resource efficient development pathway. I've just extracted a few key outcomes from this policy or indicators to be reported against in relation to the built environment. On the right-hand side, you'll see that commitments were made with regards to investment within public infrastructure, the development of norms and standards to improve integrated development and spatial planning of human settlements with the aim to redress apartheid spatial planning. So for those of you who are familiar with the country's history, you'll know that many of our spatial challenges are as a result of the segregated spatial development. Then there's a commitment as well around the development of net zero building standards. The compliance with SANS 204. SANS 204 is an energy efficiency standard. At the moment, it is voluntary. The plan speaks to the improvement of municipal retrofit standards, waste diversion from landfill, the generation of renewable energy, 20,000 megawatts, as well as the reduction of water demand. Just subsequent to that is the medium-term strategic framework. The medium-term strategic framework is the implementation framework for the National Development Plan. So this is the framework unpacks the pathway to achieving the objectives outlined within the National Development Plan. As far as I understand, the framework is currently under review since it was only developed for the period 2014 to 2019. And so I think government's in the process of measuring whether we've achieved what was meant to be achieved or targeted. And I'm sure a new plan, updated plan, will be issued at some point. Now moving to the national environmental policy landscape, just at a high level, again, I've just extracted the policy pieces relevant to the built environment. Right at the top, you'll see the National Environmental Management Act. This act governs all environmental related activity within the country, so the coordination, the mechanisms to respond in a way that is environmentally appropriate. And under that sits the National Environmental Management Equality Act and the National Environmental Management Protected Areas Act and Biodiversity Act, as well as the Waste Act. The Waste Act is supplemented by the National Waste Management Strategy, which once again is just an implementation plan and a small component of implementing the Waste Act. At a spatial planning point of level, as mentioned before, you can see in the image that the segregated spatial planning. We've got what we call SPLUMA, the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, and the purpose of the Act is to address issues of sustainability, uniformity when it comes to the implementation of spatial planning and land use management. The intention is also to manage the relationship between spatial planning and land use management through the policy, and to address issues of social and economic equity and inclusivity. At a practical level, or at an implementation level, we've got the National Spatial Development Framework. A draft has just been issued, and this, once again, is a very practical document intended to guide all spheres of government, including municipalities, when implementing their localized spatial development frameworks. And it takes into account various issues to ensure that economic growth is stimulated, as well as inclusive growth, as well as integrated development as well. Moving on to policy related to public infrastructure, the first policy related to this listed is the Infrastructure Development Act. And the purpose of this act was to address all activity related to public sector infrastructure, and to ensure that all projects relating to public sector infrastructure are delivered in such a way that results in very high social and economic benefit. The second one is the National Framework for Green Building in South Africa. And this was a DPW, Department of Public Works policy, but this is now superseded by the Public Works Green Building Policy issued at the Green Building Council convention that we host in October annually. So this was launched last year, and this policy guides the greening of buildings managed by DPW. DPW is the largest property owner in the country. So they are responsible for the construction and the management of public sector buildings, as well as the leasing. The policy speaks to the development of energy, water and waste management plans. It speaks to the certification of public buildings. It speaks to education and awareness. It speaks to capacity building and many other enablers to green building and sustainable development. Moving on to national energy efficiency strategies. The first one on the left is the draft post-2015 National Energy Efficiency Strategy. And so it's recognized that energy efficiency poses the single greatest opportunity to reduce carbon emissions within the built environment, and hence the emphasis on energy efficiency. This is a 15-year pathway, energy efficiency pathway for the country, and you'll see that there are some targets included within that policy. So for the public sector, an energy efficiency or reduction of energy consumption at the level of 50%, relative to this 2015 baseline is expected. The residential sector, we're looking at 20% energy demand reductions, and within the commercial sector, 37%. The policy also alludes to SANS 1544, which speaks to the implementation of energy performance certificates due to be implemented next year. And this speaks to the display of energy performance certificates for non-residential buildings. So anything over 1,000 square meters for a government building and 2,000 square meters for private sector building. On the right-hand side, we've got the Integrated Resource Management Plan, we refer to as the IRP. A draft updated IRP was released last year, and I think we're waiting for the final IRP to be issued. And essentially, the IRP speaks to the energy resourcing roadmap of the country. And of course, the intention is to diversify the energy mix. Many of you will know that South Africa is a very coal-intensive country, and about 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions from the country are as a result of the energy sector. It's anticipated that ambitious targets such as the decommissioning of 35 gigawatts, of 42 gigawatts, so that's over 80% of the energy supply, will no longer be coal-based. So we expect 35 gigawatts of coal-based power to be decommissioned and replaced by renewables energy and gas. With regards to the climate change policy landscape, I've indicated the key 3 policies, but there are multiple framework documents that sit under these 3 policies. The very first was the National Climate Change Response White Paper, established in 2011. The white paper addressed both adaptation and mitigation climate change response and resourcing, etc. Just recently, the white paper is now will soon be superseded by the draft, the climate change bill. At the moment, it's still a draft climate change bill. And the intent of the bill is to once again specify the climate change response actions required to be taken by the country, to address the resourcing needs for that, the incentives around that, and the coordination across spheres of government, the coordination across different policies. Then lastly is the carbon tax bill and offsets related to that. And this is a very important mechanism from an industry perspective in terms of trying to disincentivize emissions. At the moment, the rate or the fee, the penalty is quite low, or the tax is quite low. It's sitting at 120 Rand per tonne. And this is, the bill was implemented early this year, circa June 2019. With respect to national building regulations, I've highlighted 3 key ones. The SANS 10400, SANS 10400 is the national building regulations, and within this sits the SANS 10400 XA, which begins to address energy efficiency. The targets are not ambitious, or may not be as ambitious as the green building standards set by the Green Building Council, for example, but energy efficiency is recognised. SANS 10400 XB is intended to address water efficiency in buildings, and this is still to be developed. And maybe just to take a step back, SANS 10400 XA was under review this year, and so we do expect that the targets will become increasingly ambitious, with every review cycle. SANS 204, as mentioned previously, is a voluntary standard for energy efficiency in buildings. At the city level, I'd like to mention the C40 Cities Program. C40 has partnered with 4 South African cities, the City of Tshwane, City of eThekwini, City of Johannesburg, and the City of Cape Town, to, 1, develop climate action plans, and by 2020 we expect that the 4 cities will have clear pathways regarding how they intend to address climate mitigation and resilience in order to adhere to the Paris Agreement targets. Secondly, the C40 Cities Program is implementing a buildings program, and the target or the focus here is to achieve net zero standards, as mentioned earlier. So they're looking at ensuring that the cities can achieve net zero standards come 2030 for new buildings, and net zero standards for new and existing buildings come 2050, apologies. The mechanisms through which the C40 Cities is assisting or intends to achieve these targets is through the assisting municipalities with developing bylaws, green building bylaws. So Tshwane is already in the process of reviewing its bylaw, and the City of Johannesburg, for example, is in the process of consulting around the development of its bylaw. And in addition, we know that a high level of urbanization is expected to come 2050, and predominantly within Asia and Africa. City of Joburg just mentioned yesterday that it's anticipated that if cities take action, 40% of the Paris Agreement objectives will be met. So in terms of additional initiatives within the City of Tshwane, the city has an existing green building bylaw and is in the process of reviewing it. It's the only city in the country to have an existing green building bylaw. As a result of the BEA program, the city is developing and piloting a retrofitting procurement guideline. The City of Cape Town has, and presented by, this was presented by Rebecca a while ago, has taken the step of incorporating EDGE standards into its human settlements delivery requirements. The city also incentivizes green building in relation to building height. The city of eThekwini, a metropolitan municipality, provides a property tax rebate for residential and non-residential Green Star and EDGE certified buildings. And now moving on to the policy limitations, the implementation challenges and opportunities. Just at a very high level, these are some of the policy and implementation limitations as a result of the current policy framework. The first one is that the Green Building Council certification standards are currently voluntary and are not recognized by the National Building Regulations. So there are no green building, there's no green building policy in place at the moment. And secondly, green building specifications or standards are implemented across spheres of government in a way that lacks uniformity. So every department and every municipality has the liberty of establishing their own efficiency standards or green building standards. And as a result, this may result in a lack of uniformity when it comes to implementation. And this could be as a result of the lack of coordination across the spheres of government. This could be due to the lack of a green building policy and due to the silos that exist between the public and private sector and within government itself. Thirdly, there are minimal financial and non-financial incentives for green building. So there are some incentives that do exist, like the 12L, for example, and some of the incentives just previously mentioned at the city level. But I think we could certainly do with more incentives, particularly from the financial sector. Lastly, more public and private partnerships are required to realize implementation, and I think this really speaks to aligning public and private sector objectives when implementing sustainable development. Furthermore, we need more capacity building, education and awareness to realize implementation at scale. We need a more integrated approach to green building. So we need to start looking at the precinct level applications of sustainability. Furthermore, there are limited, very few of the green building initiatives are scaled up. So at the moment, the council's certified 502 projects to date. But this is, I think, symptomatic of the fact that there is, limited programmatic implementation. And so what we see is the private sector leading the transformation of the built environment on a voluntary basis. But at the public sector level, very little implementation is taking place at scale in the context of, greening the built environment. There are some flagship projects within the public sector. And then furthermore, more inclusive decision-making processes are required. And this came through during our convention last week. Many stakeholders are saying, if you want to achieve scale and real meaningful impact, we need to place more emphasis on engaging the stakeholders affected by the transformation. I think this is important as well when it comes to informing policy. We need to understand the conditions at the grassroots level. And what are the opportunities? So from a Green Building Council perspective, we view our role as in the policy space to be the mainstreaming of green building performance specifications international and subnational policies to enable the implementation of green building programs at scale. And we can do this in several ways, and I've listed 4. One of them could be to develop knowledge products, to develop capacity within the public and private sector, to continue with our advocacy, and to participate in the policy update and consultation processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sompo, for that presentation. I think it's very important that you gave us that overview and also giving us the different types of limitations that we have in South Africa, and then also focusing, not just focusing on the challenges that we have, but also the opportunities that we can take from your presentation. And I think that's very important. So thank you very much for that. Luke, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, so if you can just share your screen, and then you can just give us the presentation.
I don't know if you see. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in the meeting of the regional network, network meeting on building. And yes, I was tasked to share with you the methodology that we use when conducting energy audits in buildings. As I said earlier, we are a firm specialized in energy efficiency, renewable energy.
Hi, look, sorry to disturb you. Can you just put the presentation mode?
Sorry?
Can you put your presentation in presentation mode?
Ah, sorry. Is it okay now?
It's fine, I think.
Is it fine? But do you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Oh, okay, great. So yeah, as I said, we have conducted, and we are still conducting a lot of energy efficiency energy audits related to our as part of our energy efficiency projects in many parts in Africa. That's why we conducted the energy audit in Ghana for the Accra metropolitan region. We also conducted energy audit in many other countries. So my point, what I want to say is we make sure we ensure that we follow good practices to do that. So now I would like to share with you our experience and the process, the methodology that we use when conducting energy audit. So first of all, I just want to share with you the agenda of my presentation. So I want to do some introduction, tell you about the energy audit objectives and the standards and types of energy audits that we follow, and also the process, and then just share with you information on some tools that we use for our energy audit exercises. So before I tell you about the objective, I just want to quickly talk about the analogy that I see between the medical profession and the field of energy management. Let's say that if a patient with a medical complaint presents himself or herself before a doctor, the doctor must first accurately diagnose the condition before taking further steps. And I guess in that case, the doctor should obtain information from the patient by asking informed questions, possibly carrying out tests, use his knowledge and expertise in order to diagnose the complaint and ultimately prescribe treatment. So in a similar manner, before any problem can be treated at a building or at a facility, it is first necessary to determine the current state of the facilities or organization's energy consumption, and then diagnose any problem that exists. So in order to do this, an energy audit must be undertaken and analysis performed on the collected data. So this brings me to the objectives of an energy audit, which are basically to develop an energy balance of a facility and determine the consumption intensity and demand profile of energy. To have an idea about a preliminary identification of opportunities for further study and investment targeting, detailed study to demonstrate feasibility and justify investment in an energy efficiency measure, verification of performance of an existing energy efficiency investment. So these are the objectives that we pursue when we conduct an energy audit. So what are the international standard or the standard of energy audit that exists? We have the EU the EN 16240, which is from the EU, on energy audits, which are it gives the general requirement. We also have ISO 50002, which was published in 2014. I heard it must be under review now. That's what I heard recently. But anyway, we have this this standard ISO 50002 released in 2014 on energy audit. So it also gives a requirement with guidance for use. So the ISO standard provide or give recommendation on good practices when conducting an energy audit. So, and what we do, I mean, we follow the standard, the good practice recommendation from the standard when we are conducting our energy audit. So the question we can ask here is, which one is the best? And the answer that I can give you is none of them. They are all similar and promote the same basic steps. Do we need a reference framework for energy audit? Yes, we do need it. As I said earlier, this framework provide good practice recommendations for conducting energy audit. So do all energy audits need to have exactly the same approach? The same approach details? No, they don't. All energy audits are different, so they have different objectives, different budget, different systems, etc. So this brings me to the types of energy audits that we have, the levels. We have the level 1 audit, which is always conducted. That it is simple. So as you can see, the level 1 energy audit is low-cost investment and typically used for planning and a more detailed audit. Or as a standalone audit on simple facilities. And we have used level 1, and even with level 1 energy audit, you can identify good energy saving opportunities at a facility, especially at a facility which has never been audited. It's easy to use a level 1 energy audit, and also you use it based on the objectives that you're pursuing. So more detailed audits should not be performed until a commitment to project implementation under investment qualification criteria has been made. So we make sure that we conduct level 1 energy audits, and then we decide if it is necessary to go to level 2 or level 3. So level 1 energy audit, the application is for small, is applied when we have like a very small energy budget for preliminary, for large organizations. And it's, what are the needs? It's used for monitoring, scoping, qualification. And the needs that it addresses like it helps to have an indication of potential savings from more detailed audits, to also raise awareness to identify strategic energy area of focus. So that's what you use the energy level 1 energy audit for. And also it also helps to determine the scale of opportunity that exists in on the field. So what are the data collection requirements for skills? You need very basic technical training and understanding of system when you conduct a level 1 energy audit. And use the data collection. You also need to use existing data and meters for data collection when you're conducting a level 1 energy audit. And use a lot of rules of thumb based on basic parameters and establish basic energy performance indicators. To have a list of site equipment, to know about the schedules, to know about the duty factors and load factors. So these are the kind of data that you collect when you're conducting a level 1 energy audit. So what the level of effort, the typical, like it's for a small medium building, it will take like maybe 1 or 2 days on site and 1 week in office to write the report. And for large buildings, it can take like 2 days on site and 1 or 2 weeks in office for report writing. So when you look at level 2 energy audits, that one is used for larger facilities, and it's also applied when further development of opportunities need to be prioritized, like the opportunities that have been identified in level 1 energy audit. So we want to have to know further about it, and later maybe decided to invest or to implement that energy efficiency, the energy efficiency opportunities. So what are the needs that are addressed by doing a level 2 energy audit? So they are used to evaluate a range of specific opportunities, to identify complex opportunities that require a more detailed study at level 3. So it's used by the auditor when, like, audit for that one. An auditor is typically outsourced and has appropriate. The auditor has appropriate technical skills and familiarity with particular facilities. So level 2 energy audits, where we did them, were basically inside organizations who want to invest in energy saving opportunities. So they have their own resources and they want to invest in it. As you can see, the level 2 energy audit is more advanced, detailed than the level 1, so they need to know more precisely about the parameters before they decide for the invest in the energy saving measure opportunity. So for the data collection, it requires like detailed data, including daily profiles. You need detailed variables for production, occupancy, weather correlated to energy use. Sub-meter data, site data can be sufficient, but temporary metering may be needed. So you also need the design data, operation and maintenance data, capital plan instruments, instrument configurations, automation detail, etc., for level 2. As you can see, because it requires, more detailed data, the typical level of efforts is higher. When you take a small, medium building, it takes like 1 to 2 weeks on site and 1 to 2 weeks in office to write a report. When we're looking at large buildings, it takes like 2 to 3 weeks on site and 1 to 2 weeks in office to write the report. I mean, these are really indicative data, values here, so that you have an idea of the level of effort. I can tell you that when we're doing this kind of energy, 1 week, 1 full week, even for large buildings, office towers, 1 maximum 2 weeks is already, we make sure that we do that in 1 or 2 weeks. Now, when you look at the level 3 energy audit, as you can see, it is really, really advanced and is highly detailed and requires significant input from the site users. As it's used to have an idea of the cost effectiveness with very large energy spending, can be a focused assessment on a very specific system. So we can decide to conduct a level 3 energy audit on the compressed air systems, or maybe on the boiler system, and so on. So it's really a focus when you want to really focus on a very specific system. And yeah, it's very detailed. We use it to have a more detailed evaluation of a range of specific opportunities, detailed cost benefits analysis. And for the data collection, it requires very detailed data, detailed load profiles need to be examined, examining variables in parallel maybe need. It needs like instruments for key processes and so on. So as you can see, the level of effort is generally the same as level 2, and they determined by detail required of the complexity of the subsystem. Now, when talking about the accuracy, the more accurate, the more precise it is, the more expensive, consuming in terms of resources. That's the point in this slide. So these are the different types of energy audits that we have. Now, when talking about the process, what are the different steps that we follow when we go on, when we conducting an energy audit? I have here a graphic which shows you all the different steps. And as I said, we ensure that we follow good practices. And what we follow here, what I'm showing you here, is a process recommended in ISO 50002, which is, it gives you the basic things to do. So we have, let's say, 7 steps in the process. So like step 1, you're talking about the energy audit planning. And then step 2, the opening meeting with the site users, with the facility managers, or those who are using the facility to be audited. Now talk about data collection in step 3, measurement plan in step 4, step 5, conducting a site visit, and then step 6, analysis, and step 7, energy audit reporting, and then in step 8, we have the closing meeting where you present the report. So what I want to do now is to quickly go to each step, so that to give you, more explanation on what is in that step. What do we do when I say step 1? When I say, for example, in step 1, what do we do when we conduct when we are at step 1, which is planning the energy audit? So I just want to give you quickly, to tell you quickly the kind of activities. We make sure that, let's say that in step 1, you have 2 key elements. You have the list of data that you have to establish the list of data that you need to collect, and you also have to plan the energy audit. You have to have a lot of meetings, discussions with the site, the facility managers, with the facility users. So the example of activities that we have is that, for example, to hold meeting with the stakeholders to socialize energy audit initiative, to establish development stage of previously, to have information about the previous project, let's say energy savings project, if they have, or any kind of projects that they conducted in the past. And the reason we're doing that is to see what are the priorities, the business priorities, and the targets, and necessarily, like, see what are the decision, what makes them take the decision, for example, to invest in a project. What are the different, what are the investment plans? What are, for example, the minimum rate of returns that they need to have to decide, okay, yes, we want to go ahead with the energy, the project. So we have this kind of discussions with them, and also discuss the need of a data collection with the different types of data that we want. We need to collect, we need for our analysis. what are the data that are available right at the moment when we are planning the energy audit? What are the data that are available that we can have, and so that we know how to plan the data collection on site. So these are the kind of discussions that we have with the stakeholders when we are during that stage. And the outcomes is that at the end, after you have done your homework in step 1, at the end you have the agreement to move forward with the audit. The terms of references are clear, the scope, the roles of responsibilities, because you don't want to do the energy audit alone. You want to make sure that the staff at the sites, all the staff, the staff are also taking part, participating or facilitating the energy audit process, the deliverables, the preliminary data, as I said, the basic utility data, production data, site plan, the time frame, the key contact for energy audits, the higher, that step also allows you to get support, to have to secure the support from the higher management, and also uptake basic facility data. Now, I have put step 2 and 3 together. It's about opening meeting and data collection initiation. So that one for opening meeting, like step 1, you planned your energy audit. Step 2, now you have a meeting with, you have an opening meeting, and then you review again the roles and responsibilities, expectations for cooperation. Cooperation is very, very important. That's why I think the key point here is that the facility staff are part of the energy audit team. So if you don't have people at the facility there to help you to facilitate the data collection, I'm not sure the energy audit will be successful. So you need to, another point that need to be discussed during the opening meeting, you have the access to the facility, equipment to the facility, the time frame for data collection on site, the auditor, the energy auditor and the facility management or the facility staff have to agree on the time frames, then on documents that need to be provided to the auditor, the key personnel on site to access specific areas. I mean, those who need to facilitate that. So I think here, the other key point that need to be noted is that it is important for the energy auditor to ask for data early enough. And so to make a checklist for the sites and prioritize the request according to the importance. So because time is money. So if you understand the site requirement, it will reduce delays. Because if the energy auditor does not understand the site and just goes on the site to collect data, he may face a lot of difficulty there, because it happened to us in the past, like to go on the site with a lot of equipment and not be able to use some equipment because of the configuration of the site. So all this, the configuration, understanding the site is very important for the energy auditor during that step, I mean, in the planning phase of the energy audit, before the energy auditor goes on the site to collect the data. Now, step 4, the measurement planning. You need to plan the measurement with the facility manager. And it's important before doing this to get the utility bills. It's not it's not advised for the energy auditor to go on the site without looking, reviewing in advance the utility bills. It's important to review the utility bills of the facility to be audited before going on the site, to review the drawings and specification, to review the specific operational issues, delayed maintenance item, energy analysis before the visit. So what I mean by energy analysis before the visit, it's important, like when the energy auditor has the bills, to analyze the bills before going there, to analyze the bills of the last, minimum last 3 years, if it is available. Because what we've realized is that on some sites we have the bills for the last 2, 3, 4 years, but for others, that we just provide you with the bills for the last year, and even some do not even have the bills. Then it gets complicated. So, and then to have an idea to summarize the bills and average monthly use, so that when the auditor goes on the site, he has let's say a knowledge of the site or the data before going on the site. And I think the key point here is to have a short meeting with the facility manager or the customer, to have a short meeting to see what kind of information is already available, what, as I said, and so that you know, okay, how to plan the site visit. And then step 5 is to go on the site now for the visit. And when we go on the site, like when we go on the building or on the industrial site, we go on the industrial side now to collect the data. So we have already some data like the utility data and many other data. Now we need to go on the site to understand the operation of the site, how the equipment are used. To collect data on different important parameters, like when we take some electric motor, or when we take the electric motors, we want to know at which loads the electric load motors are operating, because that one helps to identify energy saving measures. Then look at all the other systems, like the heating systems and compressed air, etc. So it is impossible within most audit to measure all parameters. So it's important to know that when we go on the site, we don't measure all the parameters. We can't. It's not possible because, as I said earlier, we go on the site, especially when it is a level 1 audit, you are there for just 1 day or 2 days. When it is a level 2 audit, you are just there for 1 week. So you know in advance what you would need to measure. That's why step 1, the planning step is very important. Then it's important when we are on the site, we do some spot measurement. We go there with our equipment, the lux meters. We go there with the watt meter, power meter, and many other equipment. And spot measurement, and sometimes medium and long-term monitoring. We put our power analyzer there on the site and collect continuously data over 1 week, or over 2 weeks, so that we can analyze and be more precise in our analysis. So the energy auditor must be an expert at making estimates based on incomplete data, because these are situations that that an energy auditor can face. And this is a table which gives you an example of a survey form that we use. So when we go, we have this table. Of course, when we go on this set, it is empty. Then after the data collection, it is full, because there you see on the first column, we have the room where the equipment is used, the type of equipment, the quantity, and the power, and the total power, and also the total power in kilowatt, the schedule, so what is the number of hours, etc. So this, at the end of our energy, this is an example of table that we get, and that helps us in the analysis of and helps us do the energy balance of the facility. So as I said, for the step 6, this is for analysis. And this is when you do the detailed analysis of the data that you have collected. You process the data and analyze them. And at the end, one of the outcome of the analysis is that you have an energy balance. And then you know what are the different types of energy, different forms of energy that are consumed on at the facility or at the site. And also, what is the parts of the contribution of each form of energy to the total energy consumption on the site. So these are the kind of things that we do at this step, do this calculation. Then we have an idea of the energy saving opportunities. Then we analyze them. We do a technical analysis, calculate the energy savings, and then we analyze determine the financial parameters, for example, what will be the payback, and different many other things. So this step is basically what you do when you come back at your office for 1 or 2 weeks to write the reports. For report write, it is important. Now, step 7, the 7th step is to write a report, and then depending on the type of audit the report, you have a format. So as I said, the level 1 energy audit, the report there is shorter than the level 2 energy audit. So, but you have the format, what should be in the report, because the objectives of the report is to summarize the findings of the energy audit, and then to convince the facility owner to get on board, to make it reader-friendly and comprehensive for busy managers. So that's why when we write our energy audit report, we always have an executive summary section where we make sure that we summarize the report and put the very, very key points and key messages in that executive summary session, because we know the managers do not have time, and they want to go through the whole report. What they will be interested in is the executive summary. So the format of the report, the table of content, or the different points that should be put in the report in the standard. They are also suggested in the standard ISO 50002, and also the other standard, the European standard. There are many other standards. I just put the European standard and ISO 50002 for, just to indicate that they are standard. You have also ASHRAE standard, but internationally we prefer the ISO 50002 standard. That's what we use. So, and then you have the closing meeting. The closing meeting, during which the energy auditor has to go and present the findings of the energy audit. So, as I said, the report should be really clear and contain the key messages, because what we want here is to present in the report in a very convincing way, so that at the end, the managers of the facility managers decide to invest. We want to make it very, look nice and have a very good presentation, so to increase the chances of the facility manager saying at the end, okay, we want to invest, or we are interested in investing in this energy savings measure. But at least what is important here is that during this meeting, that the key messages are conveyed to the facility managers. So before I finish quickly, here I just want to give you some tools that can be used for energy audit. You have the Rescreen. Rescreen software. Rescreen is a clean energy management software system for the feasibility analysis of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and cogeneration project, as well as for continuous energy performance analysis. So we use it to analyze the energy saving opportunities that we have identified. We also use it to calculate the energy savings, to do the financial analysis of the savings. You have also EQuest, which was designed to provide a detailed analysis of state-of-the-art building design technology using energy saving simulation techniques for the more sophisticated buildings. Mainly for buildings, but I think for the Rescreens is more, practical for us. From my point of view, based on my experience, I think I use mainly Rescreen for analysis of the energy savings opportunities. So this is what I want to say quickly for about the process that we follow to do energy audits. I was given 15 minutes. I'm sorry, it's difficult to say all these things in 15 minutes. So sorry for going over the time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Luc. I think it will be very useful for the cities that we work with, who are currently struggling with doing any energy audits. So I think we have run out of time, but if anyone has a question, I think we'll just focus on the questions. There won't be any regional updates from the side. But if you have any questions, please ask, and so that we can finish off. Anyone have a question for Shompo or Luke? Okay, it doesn't seem like it, but I just have one question for you, Luke. So in terms of, I'm not sure if you did mention this, but in terms of, I'm not sure if in Accra there is data availability limitations, but how do you deal with such?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
So a lot of our cities in South Africa are actually experiencing data availability limitations. So they're really struggling with finding data so that they can do energy audits. How do you deal with such issues in the municipalities or the buildings that you've done energy audits on?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. As I said, it's a very complicated issue. So, I mean, that's as I said earlier. Most of the time, when they go, what you don't see is like the technical specifications, the drawings. You go on the site. You go on the site, for example, you see an electric motor, and I mean the information on the what is the nominal power, the power ratings, and the current and the amperage rating, and all these things you don't see it on the motor because the motor is a very old motor. So you don't see this kind of thing. That's why it is important to go on the site and to do a lot of measurement. So it is important for the energy auditor to have equipment. If you don't have the equipment, what happens? What also happens that you have an energy auditor, they have the very basic equipment. So like a lux meter, a power meter. This is not enough when you are in this kind of situation. When you're in that kind of situation, you have a power analyzer. It is very important. It's really helpful. You have a power analyzer. You can even monitor the energy consumption of the whole site, for over 2-3 weeks, and then it gives you an idea of the energy consumption pattern at the site. So the other issue that the energy auditor may face is, for example, if they go on the site, they ask for the utility bills or the energy bills, and then they are not there. They don't have it, or they may have it, maybe not for the entire year. So and in that case, what we do is, if the facility manager cannot provide us with this data, then especially when it is utility energy like electricity or gas, then we go to the utility itself. Like if it is electricity, we go to the electricity provider and try to retrieve the information from the electricity provider. And in most cases, it has worked for us, but it delays the whole process. When you go to the utility provider or gas provider. So these are the measures that we use to deal with, to try to deal with that kind of situation. You have to be, the energy auditor has to be creative sometimes and see what he can do, or what he or she can do to get the data. And these are some of the ways that we use to do them.
Vuyile, can I add, in the context of data, I think the same is true for policy development, that there is often insufficient data to guide, for example, green building specifications in the context of cities or departments developing their own efficiency targets. And so in the absence of, an understanding of the baseline, it is difficult to know exactly what the targeted performance should be.
Yes. Yeah.
And in addition to that, from a financial incentives point of view, I think the financial sector, it's important to the financial sector as well,
yes,
to see the results, the performance results of green building. So we need that tangible evidence to instill that, that financier confidence.
Yeah. And when we conduct an energy audit at a site which has this kind of problem, like data issue, I mean, one of the measures, like general measure that we recommend, is to have a very a strong system in place so that they can collect somebody, designate or nominate somebody to be specifically in charge of keeping the data, I mean, for monitoring them and keeping them, so that in the future, when they want to invest or implement an energy saving project, have all the data they need, because as you said, without data you can't establish the baseline, and baseline is very key. If you don't have the baseline, then I don't know what is possible. It's very important, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Does anyone have another question? Otherwise we can close it and call it a day. Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, Sompo and Luke. I appreciate you coming on presenting to us. So I will share the recording with you. I'll share a link so you can share with anyone who's interested to listen to the recording. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and have a great evening.